She's just another desk jockey playing soldier. The instructor sneered, watching the woman in civilian clothes approach the firing line. The assembled SEAL candidates chuckled nervously, their laughter echoing across the Virginia Beach training facility. The woman said nothing, merely nodding once before picking up the modified M4 carbine with practiced ease. But when Master Chief Reynolds saw the way her fingers found the selector switch without looking, how her stance shifted into a perfect isosceles without conscious thought, something cold ran down his spine. If you believe actions speak louder than assumptions, type respect below. The morning had started like any other at Naval Special Warfare Development Group's classified training compound. Sarah Morgan had arrived in jeans and a faded Georgetown University sweatshirt, carrying only a worn canvas messenger bag and a thermos of black coffee. She'd been called in to observe the new selection course, ostensibly as a civilian contractor reviewing administrative procedures. Instructor Davis had taken one look at her slight frame, her reading glasses perched on her nose, and immediately dismissed her as another bureaucrat sent by Washington to waste their time. "Ma'am, this is a live-fire exercise," he'd announced loudly enough for the entire platoon to hear. "Maybe you should wait in the observation tower where it's safe. We wouldn't want you getting hurt when the real operators start working the candidates." Young men desperate to prove themselves worthy of the trident had laughed on cue, their instructor's contempt giving them permission to dismiss this quiet woman who looked more suited to a library than a kill house. Sarah had simply adjusted her glasses and asked in a voice barely above a whisper, "May I?" gesturing toward the range. What happened next would become the most downloaded training video in DevGru history. Davis, still smirking, had waved her forward with exaggerated courtesy. "By all means, ma'am. Show us what they teach at whatever community college gave you that criminal justice degree." Sarah had walked to the firing line with measured steps, her sneakers silent on the concrete. She'd picked up the rifle, and in one fluid motion had press-checked the chamber, confirmed the magazine was seated, and brought the weapon to low ready. The laughter died instantly. Her transformation was subtle but absolute. Her shoulders squared, her breathing shifted to a combat rhythm, and her entire bearing changed from unassuming to lethal. 10 targets, varied distances, standard qualification? She'd asked, though it wasn't really a question. Davis, his confidence faltering, had nodded. The range officer, sensing something significant was about to happen, had started recording on his phone. Sarah had taken 3 deep breaths, each one slower than the last, and then moved. The rifle became an extension of her will. 10 shots rang out in a rhythm that spoke of muscle memory carved into her nervous system through thousands of repetitions. She didn't rush, didn't showboat. She simply executed with the mechanical precision of someone who had long ago transcended the need to prove anything to anyone. The first 5 targets, steel plates at 50 meters, rang out a metallic symphony. Without pausing, she transitioned to the paper targets at varying distances, her sight picture never wavering, her trigger squeeze consistent enough to teach in textbooks. The spent brass hadn't finished hitting the ground when she safed the weapon, placed it on the bench, and stepped back. Total elapsed time, 8.7 seconds. 10 shots, 10 perfect hits. Not just hits, but a grouping so tight that the range officer would later measure it at less than 2 inches across all distances. The silence that followed was absolute, broken only by the distant cry of seagulls and the flags snapping in the ocean breeze. Davis stood frozen, his mouth slightly open, his earlier arrogance evaporating like morning mist. Master Chief Reynolds had been watching from the command building's 2nd floor, initially drawn by the unusual sight of a civilian on his range. He'd seen thousands of shooters in his 23 years in the teams, had trained with Delta, SAS, and Mossad operators, but he'd recognized something in those 8.7 seconds that transcended mere marksmanship. It was the complete absence of ego, the total focus on task completion rather than performance. He'd pulled out his secure phone and made a call to Langley. The conversation was brief, punctuated by long pauses as classified information was verified. When he hung up, he was already moving toward the door, his aide struggling to keep pace. "Master Chief?" the younger SEAL asked. Reynolds didn't slow down. "Get me her file from the SAP server. Authorization code Whiskey 77. The aide's fingers flew across his tablet. navigating through layers of security that most people didn't know existed. When the file finally loaded, marked with classification stamps that required presidential clearance to view, the aide nearly dropped the device. "Sir, this can't be right. Operation Neptune Spear? Operation Gothic Serpent?" She was at. Reynolds cut him off. She was at all of them. The Master Chief emerged onto the range like a force of nature, his presence immediately commanding attention from every candidate present. He walked directly to Sarah, who was now calmly cleaning her glasses with the hem of her sweatshirt. The candidates watched in confusion as their Master Chief, a man who'd earned the Navy Cross twice and had more combat deployments than most of them had birthdays, came to a halt 3 feet from the small woman and snapped to attention. His salute was textbook perfect, held with the rigid precision reserved for Medal of Honor recipients and fallen heroes. "Officer Morgan," he said, his voice carrying across the suddenly silent range. "I apologize for my instructor's ignorance. I wasn't aware the agency was running assessment today." Sarah returned the salute casually, almost dismissively. "No assessment, Master Chief. Just wanted to see how the new generation is shaping up." Her voice was quiet, conversational, but something in it made every operator present unconsciously straighten their spines. Davis, his face now pale, started to speak, but Reynolds silenced him with a look that could have melted steel. The Master Chief turned to address the assembled candidates, his voice taking on the tone reserved for teaching the most crucial lessons. "Gentlemen, you've just witnessed something most operators never see in their entire careers. Officer Sarah Morgan, though you won't find that name in any public record. 16 years with the Special Activities Center. Primary shooter on 37 Tier 1 operations that officially never happened. The intelligence community calls her the Ghost because she's credited with eliminating targets others couldn't even find." He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. "That rifle qualification you just witnessed? She shot that same pattern in Abbottabad while providing overwatch for Red Squadron. She shot it in Mogadishu when Task Force Ranger needed an angel on their shoulder. She shot it in places so classified that mentioning their names would violate federal law." The candidates stood transfixed, their earlier laughter now a source of burning shame. One of them, brave enough to speak, asked, "Master Chief, why didn't she say anything?" Reynolds looked at the young SEAL candidate with something approaching pity. "Because, son, real operators don't need to announce themselves. Their actions do the talking." Sarah had already started walking toward the parking lot when Davis finally found his voice. "Ma'am, I need to apologize. I was completely out of line." She stopped but didn't turn around. "Instructor Davis," she said, her voice carrying despite its soft volume. "You have good instincts but poor judgment. The enemy won't announce themselves with medals or uniforms. Sometimes the most dangerous person in the room is the one nobody notices." She paused, then added, "Teach your students that. It might save their lives one day." As she continued walking, Davis called out one more time, "Will you come back? To teach them, I mean." This time she did turn, a slight smile playing at the corners of her mouth. "I never left, instructor. I've been evaluating your class for 3 weeks. The woman who brings coffee to your planning meetings? That's been me." The revelation hit the group like a physical blow. Davis thought back to all the classified discussions, the operational planning, the casual dismissal of the coffee lady who'd sat silently in the corner taking notes. "Your selection process has significant vulnerabilities," Sarah continued. "My report will be on Admiral Morrison's desk by end of business today." Within hours, the story had spread through the naval special warfare community like wildfire. Someone leaked the range footage to a secure operator forum, where it was viewed over 10,000 times in the first day. Comments poured in from operators worldwide, many claiming to have worked with the Ghost on operations they still couldn't discuss. A British SAS trooper wrote, "If Sarah Morgan is involved in your operation, your only job is to not slow her down." An Israeli Sayeret Makal operator added, "We called her the professor because she turned killing into an academic discipline." But perhaps the most telling comment came from a retired Delta Force colonel. "In 20 years of special operations, I've seen maybe 5 people who could do what she does. 4 of them are dead. She's the only one who made it look easy." The Navy Times wanted to run a story, but every request for information hit the same wall. No such person exists in our records. The official denial only fueled more speculation. Someone noticed that satellite imagery from certain high-value target eliminations showed a shooter's position that matched known friendly forces in the area. Another operator pointed out that several impossible shots, attributed to lucky breaks or divine intervention in after-action reports, suddenly made sense if there had been an invisible guardian angel with a rifle. The transformation in the training facility was immediate and profound. Davis, humbled by his spectacular misjudgment, restructured the entire selection course. He implemented what became known as the Morgan Standard, a series of exercises designed to identify and cultivate operators who could blend into any environment while maintaining elite capabilities. The wake-up call resonated throughout the special operations community. The commander of JSOC issued a directive that all special operations units would undergo gray man training, learning to operate without the traditional markers of military bearing. The message was clear. The most effective warriors were those who could hide in plain sight until the moment their skills were needed. 3 months later, a congressional subcommittee quietly approved funding for a new classification of operator, inspired by what they'd learned from the Morgan incident. These administrative specialists would be trained to unprecedented standards but would maintain cover identities as clerks, analysts, and support staff. The program's unofficial motto, whispered in the halls of Fort Bragg and Dam Neck, was simple: silence is the sharpest weapon. 6 months after the incident at the range, Instructor Davis was deployed to an undisclosed location in eastern Syria. His team was pinned down by superior forces, their extraction compromised, ammunition running low. As he prepared for what seemed like a final stand, shots began ringing out from a ridgeline 800 meters to their north. Impossible shots, dropping enemy fighters who thought they were in perfect cover. The fire was so precise, so methodical, that it broke the enemy's will to fight within minutes. As Davis and his team extracted to the landing zone, he keyed his radio. "Guardian Angel, this is Bravo 7. Request identification." Over the response came in a whisper he recognized immediately. "No such call sign exists, Bravo 7. Focus on your extraction." As their helicopter lifted off, Davis caught a glimpse of a lone figure on the ridgeline, barely visible against the rocks, already disappearing into the landscape. He never filed a report about the sniper's support. Some stories, he'd learned, were better left untold. But he kept a photo on his desk back at Dam Neck, a single shell casing he'd found at the Virginia Beach Range, a reminder that true warriors don't need glory or recognition. They need only the knowledge that when the moment came, they were ready. For more stories where humility triumphs over arrogance and where silent competence defines true worth, subscribe to Unknown Heroine Stories.